the presidency says the Democratic Alliance's legal challenge of the Lady R report is political grandstanding. In an application filed in the Pretoria High Court, the party is challenging President Cyril Ramaphosa's bid to keep the report into the alleged weapons smuggling to Russia secret. Last month, the panel led by Judge President Phineas Mojapelo found no evidence that weapons had been loaded onto the ship. Joining us now is legal expert Modidima Mannya to weigh in on this matter. Mr. Mannya, good morning to you, and thank you very much for your time. Let me set the context for the question I'm about to ask you, because the Democratic Alliance says the following, that they are not questioning the bona fides of retired Judge Phineas Mojapelo. Instead, what they are arguing is that, one, a judge has no capacity to investigate, and second of all, a judge cannot preside over a secret inquiry, and therefore they are saying the separation of powers. When we talk about a state, it's made up of those three arms that the former President Jacob Zuma used to emphasize, the judiciary, legislature, including the executives. So, my question to you is as follows. It's not the first time we have seen a retired judge lead an inquiry. So, lead us into the DA's thinking here and whether or not they are correct in what they are going to argue in court.
Yes, good day to your viewers, and I think I'm not even sure to call that thinking. It sounds extremely ridiculous. And let me paint this picture for you. Judges in court during legal proceedings are able to deal with matters under confidentiality regimes. For instance, you know, there are cases where minors appear in court. There are cases which may involve the status of a person, and the public would be barred from actually being present in court, and the court may make orders that some of the information may not be made public. Now, you can say, as the DA seeks to claim, that it's not questioning the integrity of former Judge President Mojapelo, but they say he can't participate in a secret process. They are actually questioning him because he never participated in a secret process. He chaired a panel, and as you know, we are a constitutional state. The rights are not absolute in this country. There are laws which deals with state security and national security. You will recall that during the State Capture Commission, there are matters which impacted on the State Security Agency, and Deputy Chief Justice Zondo, as he then was, dealt with them in accordance with the law that regulated those matters. So they actually, and I'm sorry to use this word, talking absolute nonsense.
Sure. If they were to win in court, would this mean a new inquiry into the Lady R matter, Mr. Mannya? And would that then mean that a new panel, would have to be reconstituted to look into the exact same matter?
Well, let me put it this way. Firstly, there was an allegation that, Lady R transported arms which were being exported to Russia. And firstly, let me indicate, I don't even know what would be unlawful, because there's no law that precludes South Africa from trading with Russia on arms. Neither is there a United Nations resolution barring trade in arms between Russia and other countries. But assuming they were to be successful, as I understand, the challenge, firstly, is to the appointment of a judge. And if the court finds that it is unconstitutional to appoint a judge, which I doubt will happen, then, of course, the inquiry will have to start afresh. And that is if the court in any event says it sets aside the entire process, because often the courts have found some conduct not to accord with the Constitution, but has not actually set aside the consequence thereof. So if that were to be the case, then indeed there would have to be a new inquiry.
Yeah. Ramaphosa's spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, accusing the Democratic Alliance of what he says is political grandstanding and that the party does not care about national interests. It's the latter part of the question or of that statement I'm interested in. When he says that the DA does not care about national interests, what is he referring to there, possibly?
Well, look, this issue, and to put it in context, involves the war between Russia and Ukraine, which is, of course, is an international issue. And we know that countries have taken sides. The non-aligned movement itself has been accused of taking sides. But the global relationships have been seriously affected. South Africa is a beneficiary of this AGOA arrangement, which somewhat benefits certain African states. And if it has been found that South Africa might have breached the conditions of AGOA, we stand to be punished, all of us as a nation, because some of the benefits which we derive will be affected. But secondly, this issue impacts on the economy of the country. Now, the economy facilitates the ability of the state to meet its constitutional obligations, to have money to pay social grants, to pay for education and health, and all those things. And it's not in the public interest that our economy suffers as a result of false allegations, which clearly have been found to be false. It is not good for our country that our international relations are adversely affected because it impacts on our trade relations, it impacts on political relations and stability, with other countries. So it's not in the public interest that we have a situation where spurious allegations are made, which ultimately will impact on John and Peter and Paul and Kumalo on the ground because they may suffer in consequence.
It's interesting you bring up the AGOA element. We know that there is a summit that will be held in South Africa. The U.S., of course, are the sponsors here. South Africa is merely a venue, but there's also the question around whether or not South Africa is going to remain within the AGOA Accord. And what I'm trying to question here is the timing of this legal action. Are you saying that there is something to be said about how the DA has timed this, putting into or keeping in mind what you've just said, which is that the economic interests of South Africa could potentially be impacted upon?
Yes, earlier on I was listening to your conversation with Mr. Papas, the mayor of Ngeni. And he said to you, when officials say this cannot be done, he says, bring me the regulation, bring me the piece of legislation, bring me the section of the Constitution. That's exactly what the DA should practice, because we cannot have a situation where because they disagree with the president, then the entire nation must be put at risk. For instance, Koli, if the president appoints a judge to chair a commission of inquiry, it's his discretion whether he wants to appoint me as Mannya, or he wants to appoint an advocate, or he wants to appoint a judge, or he wants to appoint a professor. That's the constitutional power that he has been given to him. Now, if you look at the seriousness and the degree of the impact of this issue, the president would ordinarily, logically, must appoint a person of a judge. Now, when the DA comes and says we're not questioning the judge, but we're questioning the secrecy and all that kind of thing, effectively, they are decampaigning the Republic of South Africa. It's not about the president, it's about us. I think this is done for an ulterior purpose. I don't think there's a basis for this nonsense that the DA is doing. The country is already going through serious difficulties. The least we want is political grandstanding between the political parties represented in parliament. They were happy to have a Judge Ngobo preside over a panel which was investigating Palapala, unhappy to accept the outcome of an investigation conducted by Judge Mojapelo. I think this is grandstanding. I agree with Mr. Magwenya on this one.
Is there not something to be said, though, Mr. Mannya, about such an incident. We know now, based on this report that was issued, well, at least the terse media communique, which simply said that no weapons were loaded because the report itself remains secret. But the problem here, Mr. Mannya, is that we are a signatory to international statutes. And these statutes prevent against weapons, for example, being sold to countries that are in conflict, because human rights, which is what our foreign policy, at least the way that I've read it and how it's been explained to me, it is predicated upon. Surely there's something to be said about the president, at least, taking us into his confidence about why he has seen it fit to keep the report secret. Something that South Africans will, I suppose, take him at face value on and say the president has genuinely leveled with us. I don't know if I'm belaboring the point.
Yes, Cody, and I think we must distinguish between two things. The one thing that we cannot dispute is the lack of trust and confidence we have in the government, and that is justified to a very great extent. At the same time, we must not just simply assume that because the government in certain instances may have failed us, may have not been open and honest with us, then that is the case with regard to everything. This is not a finding of the president. This is a finding of a retired Judge President. He says, I cannot find evidence that arms were loaded on Lady R to Russia. I find that the arms were delivered, which were ordered by AMSCO in 2018 for the South African National Defense Force, and that is long before the war between Russia and Ukraine. But we must also remember that the leader of the DA, Mr. Steenhuisen, went to Ukraine. He spoke there freely against the position of the government of the Republic of South Africa. He's not the representative of the Republic of South Africa, but he has the freedom, and he has exercised that freedom. So hence I'm saying we should not be dragged as the nation into these political machinations that continue to destroy our country. Where the president is wrong, we must say without fear and favor that he's wrong. But where he is right, we must also say without fear or favor that he's right. The president is not keeping anything secret. That is the laws of the Republic passed before he even became president. The National Arms Convention Act is the one that also makes provision. The Constitution itself envisages that not all matters of state security will just be flushed up into the open. So I think we must be very careful that people must not abuse the trust deficit that we have with the government to advance their narrow, selfish political interest to the detriment of the entire nation.
I know that you have to attend to a client very soon, so I'm letting you go. So here's a final question to you. Is it time to bury the hatchet? Exactly what you've just said, because it's actually, I cannot argue with that. It's very well explained. South Africa, the government of South Africa, the United States, they seem to be agreed that perhaps there should be a burying of the hatchet here, because neither side actually wants to talk about this matter any longer. I had a conversation with the ambassador in studio here just yesterday, and he's very clear. He's only going to deal with this through diplomatic channels. There's nothing further that he is going to add to it. So perhaps is it time for the DA to move on?
Well, the DA won't move on because it's got its own objective. But if you recall, the Minister of International Relations' first protest to the Americans was the lack of following the diplomatic protocol. I don't know why the DA is not accusing the U.S. ambassador of being secretive in as much as they accuse the president. He's the one who came with these allegations. And you will recall that the president sent a mission to the United States to discuss this issue. And it was, as I understand, part of the agreement that this matter will be independently investigated, that the Republic of South Africa will share with the United States the outcome of the investigation. And I think it is in that context that both countries are satisfied that the matter has been dealt with. And it is respectable that the U.S. ambassador pointedly say that this matter should be dealt with through the diplomatic channels. That's where it belongs. It doesn't belong to a narrow political interest arena which is going to continue to further cause damage. I think, Gordon, what I wish and expect of all the political parties is to at least agree on 2 or 3 things which bother this nation. They can differ on everything else, but we never have a situation where all these parties in parliament can say, let's agree to deal with the problem of social grants or poverty or unemployment. Everything is a political football for them, and I think it's time we tell them we are sick and tired.
Legal expert Modidima Mannya, thank you very much for your time and indeed weighing in on such an important subject.